So dear students, today we are going to discuss in our first lectures part 1, which would be about what is translation. So our today's topic is what is translation. We'll discuss the term translation for some clarification. So dear students, we start from origin of the term translation. In English, the term translation first attested in 1340. Probably has been derived from Old French term translation. Both are the term translation. So English borrowed the term translation from French English. And if we go more directly, the term translation has been derived from Latin term translatio, which means transporting. Transporting is a participle coming from transfer, meaning to carry over. So in other terms, we can say that translation means to transport or transform from one place to another place, or we can say to carry a place or carry a thing from place 1 to the place 2. If we learn about the general meanings of translation, in language, term translation has several meanings. Some of them are as under. The first one is the general subject, field, or phenomena. Just like us, we are doing our degree, or we are doing our course, or we are learning translation as a subject. So it is a complete field. Today the people are getting their degrees, their masters, their PhDs in translation studies. So it is a full-fledged subject field or phenomena. For example, you can see I studied translation at university. So the first thing is it is a general subject field or phenomena. The second meaning for translation is the product, that is the text that has been translated. Means we have the translations of Holy Quran, we have the translations of different reports, we have the translations of Bible and different books, novels, dramas from one language to another language. We can say if we talk about the English Holy Quran, we'll say it is an English translation of Holy Quran. So for example, again we talk about they published the Arabic translation of the report. So you can say that a report has been written probably in a different language, but it has been translated in Arabic. Thirdly, it is a process. Translation is a process, the process of producing the translation, otherwise known as translating, the process of translating, interpreting, from interpretation of one thing. For example, translation services. So many people serve as a translator. They provide their services for translation. So it is a process through which we transfer or carry over one information from one language to another language. So general meanings, if we talk about general meanings of translation, we can get them as it is a subject field or phenomena. The second thing, the product that has been written or has been translated. And the third one is full-fledged process of producing the translation. So translation may be a verb, an action. Translate. Okay, dear students, I am giving you an equation. Source text ST, source language SL, target text TT, the target language TL. In fact, this is a process equation. How the translation works. So in fact, it is a process of translation where we always get a source text. ST always stands for source text. In a source language, SL. SL always stands for source language in which the original work has been written. That would be called source language, and the language or the material that has been written in original, that is called source text, that is needed to be translated into another language, and the other language may be termed as target language, TL. And definitely we use target language to generate target text. So it is a process from where we get some text, a source text written in a source language, and then we translate into another target language and write target text. So in fact we convert from one language to another language, from one text to another text, from source text to target text, from source language to target language. Source text written in source language is transferred or carry over to target text written in target language. So this is a process of translation, the process of translation equation. So process of translation, it involves the changing of original written text and original verbal language into a written text in a different verbal language. So here we would focus on the term different. So different verbal language is involved for translation process. Again, it involves the changing of original written text or original verbal language, that would be source language, and we convert it, we change it into a written text. It may be the target text in a different verbal language, that may be called the target language or TL. For example, when we translate a product manual from Urdu into English, so here the source text is Urdu and the target text is English, and the source language would be Urdu and the target text would be the English one. So in Urdu source language, the written text in Urdu is source text. We transfer or we translate it into target text English, the source target language English. I hope you would be quite familiar with that process of translation. It involves two languages in fact. One is the source language and the other is target language, and we simply transfer one information that is written in source language into target language. That may be the target source or the desired requirement. Okay, dear students, if we get this process where we involve two languages, so it is a traditional practice. We involve two different languages for any type of communication. For example, when we communicate with two persons from two different societies, so we translate the information given in two different languages into each other. So it is a general practice, the most prominent area of translation. The process of translating from one language into other is a traditional practice in international communication process. So international communication process, it is a traditional practice, yes. When a Chinese intend to communicate with a Pakistani student or Pakistani person, definitely they exchange their views, they exchange their translate their words to get better information. The focus is being put towards translation within different original dialects as well, because of multilingual societies. So as this is an age of globalization and we are becoming metropolitan cities, so there are amalgamation of societies, different societies that speak different languages within a society. So in multilingual societies, it is the main focus of the linguists to give it as a traditional practice as well, because when we communicate in a metropolitan city where we can find Punjabis, Sarhadi, Pashtuns, Sindhi, Balochi, maybe Saraiki. So we try to get different words and from their languages, their dialects, and we try to translate them into our own dialect. So this is another type of translation, and the focus is given converting towards these areas as well. So in other words, you can say it is broadening the concept of translation. That includes contexts as well. Context, backgrounds. Context means the backgrounds of the people. So according to the backgrounds, we can change the different according to the backgrounds of the students, background of the people, there are different changes in the dialects, so they must be translated for the better understanding. Roman Jakobson sorry students. Roman Jakobson, a Russian structuralist, very prominent figure in linguistics. Roman Jakobson. He has provided three categories of translation in his paper on linguistic aspects of translation. He has categorized the process of translation into three different categories. The first one is intralingual translation. The second one, interlingual translation. And the last, intersemiotic translation. So he is of the view that a translation may be of three different varieties. It may be termed as category, it may be termed as types. So translation has three different categories. We will learn one by one. Okay. Intralingual translation. Intralingual translation or rewording. Another term that is being used for intralingual translation is rewording. Mean an interpretation of verbal signs by means of other signs of the same language. So here our focus would be on the term same language. So intralingual translation in fact is the sorry. So intralingual translation is an interpretation of verbal signs by means of other signs of the same language. So as you know, every language has different signs, symbols that make a language comprehensible. So these signs may be synonymized. So it is a type of synonymy where we paraphrase or we give the summary or rewrite the text in other words within a same language by using the signs or the symbols or the, in other words, alphabet, letters of the same language. So we see intralingual translation when we produce a summary or otherwise rewrite a text in the same language. When we rephrase an expression in the same language, we in fact apply intralingual translation when we paraphrase something within the same language. Interlingual translation. Interlingual translation or translation proper. Translation proper, this is a term Jeremy Monday has coined for this process. Interlingual translation or translation proper, both are the terms that have been used by Roman Jakobson for the same process. So both are the same things. So what is it? An interpretation of verbal signs by means of some other language. So here our focal point would be the other language. So here we are giving an interpretation of verbal signs by using different languages. So here we involve another language for the interpretation. So interlingual translation in fact uses two different languages and two different sign systems. It is interlingual translation between two different verbal sign systems that has been the traditional focus of translation studies. So it was in fact the traditional focus of the translation studies, the interpretation of some ideas written in one language. That language would be called source language, and then transfer of the same information to another language that would be called the target language that we have already discussed. However, translation proper and of the stability of source and target has been challenged. Yes, this process has been challenged by many people. Challenges faced by interlingual translation. So some people raise questions, what do we mean by translation and how it differs from adaptation, version, transcreation and localization. In fact, versions, adaptations, transcreation, and localizations are the terms that have a little bit same similarities for the process of translation. So people raised questions for these things. We will discuss these terminologies later. Here I am giving you, probably you would not be familiar with the term transcreation and localization. Version we use it, adaptation we use it. So transcreation is the creative adaptation of video games and advertising in particular. We use transcreation to create different video games and advertisements. Sorry. So localization is the linguistic and cultural adaptation of a text for a new locale. So here when we talk about localization, in fact we induce the cultural and linguistic aspects of a locality within a text to show its originality. Okay, our third category is intersemiotic translation. Translation is not always limited to verbal languages. Okay, then what is? So first we discuss what is semiotics. Coble says semiotics is the general science of communication through signs and sign systems, of which language is but one. So he says, Coble says, when we talk about semiotics, so we involve maybe one language but not the two languages. Then what would be the second thing? The second thing would be the signs or sign systems. They may be play cards, they may be boards, they may be signboards, they may be lights, red light, green light, etc. So it is a communication through signs like lights, red light. If we go on road and we follow traffic signals, so red light stands for stop, green for okay, you can go. So these are some semiotic signs, how signs give different meanings. So intersemiotic translation is also termed as transmutation, where an interpretation of verbal signs by means of signs of non-verbal sign systems. So here we involve maybe one verbal and the other non-verbal sign system. The one may be a verbal sign system, it may be a language, and the second one would be the non-verbal sign system. Confused? Okay, I give you an example. Roman Jakobson. Sorry students. Roman Jakobson, a Russian structuralist, very prominent figure in linguistics. Roman Jakobson. He has provided three categories of translation in his paper on linguistic aspects of translation. He has categorized the process of translation into three different categories. The first one is intralingual translation. The second one, interlingual translation. And the last, intersemiotic translation. So he is of the view that a translation may be of three different varieties. It may be termed as category, it may be termed as types. So translation has three different categories. We will learn one by one. So dear students, we have discussed origin of term translation, then meanings of translation, process of translation, and Roman Jakobson's categories of translation in today's session. In the later part, we will learn further about the emergence of the translation as a full-fledged discipline as translation studies. So, dear students, please make questions in your mind and try to find the answers from the given text, and stay safe. Thank you.